All right. Hello. We're back, you guys. Let's see who's here. So if you're here, just say hey in the chat so I know you're here. Hey, Brandon. Hey, Josie. I think there's one more. Maybe not. Hey. So yeah, it looks like a lot of people are just kind of like, I'll just watch the replays, which is fine. It's good to know. All right. So we're going to do DBQ today. I'm going to share with you two different resources. So you should have just gotten. Are you guys? Do you usually watch the live on your phone or on a computer? Just curious, because that will give me some more information. Computer. Cool. All right. So if you're on your computer, you should be. Oh, weird. You should see that I just shared two documents with you. So if you click the little man icon on the top, I think that the notification is there so that you can open up the documents that I have and another document that I found that is useful. So just go ahead and open those now. I'm kind of getting myself set up as well so that you can look at the documents. That'll be easier for you. All right, let me share my window. Okay, can you guys see the documents? Do you have them? It's the DBQ from 2000, but it's the revised one. Why is it so blurry? Okay, so once you're good to go, once you have the documents up and you're ready, oh my God, just give me I don't know, tell me in the chat that you're good to go so that I know you have the documents. If you can't find them, then let me know so I can get them to you a different way. Good. All right, so looks like there's 6 of you in here now. All right, so let me just give people a second to get all set up. So just to give you some sense of what this is, all the stuff has been updated in the last few years, and so this DBQ was originally given in 2000, but it looked different then. However, what you have is this one. It's like when they actually scored this in 2000, they made this list of information to go along with it. So I just shared that with you because that's helpful. And then this one has been revised to fit the new method, almost totally the new method. So you can see here, this was revised in 2016. And you can see how it says like suggested reading and writing time is 55 minutes. So this is aligned to the 2016 exam. No, sorry, 2017 exam. So it's as close as we're going to get. There isn't too much else that's different except for this rubric here will be wrong. So don't worry about that. What is the new time? 60 minutes. So now I have 60 minutes for it. Okay, so before we super jump in, out of curiosity, what's your level of comfort with DBQs? So give me on a DBQ scale, 0 through 7. How confident in the DBQ do you feel? Okay, 5, 5, 5. That's pretty good, you guys. Okay, so then follow-up question. I can start from the beginning and just sort of walk you through all the steps of the DBQ. Or if you have some specific, a specific point that you'd rather me just focus on those points, I can do that. So either, you can let me know, go through the full essay, let's just do it from start to finish, or let's, focus on like 2 or 3 of the points. Okay, so you want to focus more on sourcing the document. Okay. All right. So we could do a body paragraph or something. Well, I mean, that'll be part of it if I kind of go through it all. But in general, what about thesis statements? So if you guys are at a 4 or 5 in comfort level, how do you feel about the beginning part? Just the reading of the documents and figuring out the thesis statements. Good. 5. Okay. All right. So let me just go through the first few steps a little bit just to give you the background. I think that's worth it. Okay. So just a little bit of background, you know, because one of you asked, is synthesis still there? It's not. So DBQ is 25% of your grade. You get 60 minutes to do it. And the rubric looks like this. So synthesis is not there. It's pretty close to the LEQ rubric. It's pretty similar. So if we just look at this really quick, you have to have a thesis. You have to have context. Those two things will go in your intro. Okay. Then there's 3 available points for evidence. One of them, 2 of them are broken down by how many documents you use. So if you use at least 6 documents, and there's always going to be 7, then you can get 2 points. If you only use 3 documents, you can get 1. And if you don't even have 3, you wouldn't get the 1. So these are just based on how many documents you're actually using. And by using, you're like using evidence from. And do not quote. Don't ever quote in the DBQ. It's a complete waste of your time. So just paraphrase. And then here you'll have to like connect it to the prompt. The evidence beyond the documents, this is your outside evidence. So you have to do this at least once. However, you should add outside evidence in every body paragraph to give you more chances to get that point, right? Because if you only try it once and you get it wrong, then you won't get that point. This right here is the sourcing. So this is one that I know you guys want more practice with. So I'll definitely spend more time on this. You have to do this correctly at least 3 times. So you want to do it more than 3 times to give yourself more chances. But basically, you have to understand something about the document. So you have to either analyze the point of view, the purpose, the historical context, or the audience. There are different like acronyms to help you remember that, like HIP or HIPPO. I've heard CHIPPO. They're all the same. But it's like 4 different options that you have to analyze each document. You don't have to do any combination of them. You just have to do at least one of them for 3 documents. So you could do purpose 3 times correctly. It doesn't matter what combination of each you do. So this is the sourcing point. And then the last one is complexity. This is the same as the LEQ. So you can get it through synthesis. You can get it through explaining nuance, explaining further connections. Okay, so that's the basis of the rubric. The big thing about the DBQ is that you want to make sure that every single sentence that you write is helping you earn a point. Okay, so the basic like steps to DBQ. The basic steps that you would go through would look like this. And this is like, you might have a process that's kind of working for you, but this is kind of the general process that I would use to write this essay. First, I'm going to read, understand, and simplify the prompt. Okay, so this is super important because the way that the prompts are now, it's not clear what reasoning skill it is. It's not really clear that it's comparison or causation or, you know, exactly what. So you have to pull out the word, right? So if we look at this one, you know, this one's kind of tricky because you have to know what kind of essay you're writing. So this prompt is like, to what extent was organized labor successful in improving the position of workers in the period from 1875 to 1900? So what do you think? What type of essay is this? Is it causation, CCOT, or comparison? Yeah, and you're right. It is causation, right? Because we can see this right here, because it's asking whether or not it was successful. It's asking you to analyze the effects, right? And so it's basically asking, what were the effects of, you know, labor unions in 1875 to 1900 more, I don't know, more positive or negative, right? So it's pretty much just asking you to like take the effects and analyze the effects. So you kind of have to, when you read the prompt, find that key word, the word that's telling you what it is. Is it causation, CCOT, or comparison? And it's just not always going to be obvious. Like it's much more obvious when they use words like differ, right? This one is a little bit trickier. So how do you know if it's CCOT? So for CCOT, we'll use words like change, transition, what's the other ones? There's a lot of, like, think of any words that mean change or mean stay the same. And that's how you'll know if it's CCOT, because it's asking you to like trace a certain time period. For causation, anything that means cause or effect or can be linked to that. And then comparison would be anything about similarity or difference. So in terms of this prompt, you really have to gauge whether you have to figure out first what were the effects of organized labor and whether or not were they successful, right? Were the effects on them positive or negative? And that's how you're going to argue this. And so the second thing you want to do then is read through all 7 docs and basically make a list that well, hold on, read through all 7 docs and just looking for how each answers the prompt. So this is how I do it, because this will save you a lot of time in the end. So, you know, if you go through and you read each document, all you're doing in that first shot is just figuring out how does this answer the prompt. So in this case, we'd be looking at, based on this document, what is the effect? What's the effect of the labor union? And is it positive or negative? And once we've done that for all 7 documents, we're going to see patterns and we're going to be able to kind of group them together and formulate a thesis. So let me give you guys a few minutes. I want you guys to look at the documents, because you'll be able to have better conversations about the documents once you've actually like taken some time to look at them. So I'm just going to like put a timer up, give you like 5 minutes, see if you can do it all in 5 minutes, and just come up with, all you're doing is going to read the document and you're just going to look for this document. Is the document online publicly, or the one that I'm typing on, I'll share with you after. But the actual documents for the DBQ I have shared with you. You have the handout. Yeah, you have the handout. So if you click the little guy on next to the chat, you should see a notification there. There's 2 documents shared with you. Okay, so take 5 minutes, read through all 7 documents, and just determine what's the effect of labor unions based on this document, and was it good or bad? Okay. So if you got it, you're reading, give me a 0 in the chat, so I know that you're good. Have you shared all the, I don't think I have. I don't think I've shared them all yet. I got to put them up. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So go ahead and read through them. And I'll jump back. I'll come back in 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, a few more minutes. Okay, when you've read all 7 documents, just put a 7 so I know that you're done. Okay, a little bit longer if those of you still working. The working people fin. What does fin mean? All right, looks like most of you guys are done. I think it means that, I don't know, the working people fin that improvements in the methods. I think it's like the working people like come to an agreement about, right? Like kind of, yeah, kind of, right? Like they're like finalized. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's just go through, let's cut through all of them. So document 1, according to document 1, what are the effects of, or were the effects of the labor union successful or not successful? And then what, what about it? So let's see what we have. So document 1, this is an editorial from the New York Times. Based on this document, are the labor unions, the practices of labor unions, successful here? No. Right. So document 1, we're seeing unsuccessful. strikes, right? So that's kind of negative. They just like weren't really successful in the strikes. Good. I don't really understand the last part of the doc though. Okay, so let me go back. Let me just write strikes were unsuccessful. Okay, so for document 1, it's pretty much just saying that they have the sympathy of a large part of the community in which they live. So, I mean, it's kind of showing that like the New York Times was not sympathetic to labor strikes. And so they are sort of saying this is hopeless, these are not going to be successful. However, they might have gained some of the sympathy of people. And so that's part of it. But strikes were largely unsuccessful, but had some support, right? Community support. Okay, document 2. What is the effect here? This one is it's not as clear. But based on this, what do we see as the effects of organized labor in order to improve the conditions? Always killing the goose that lays the golden egg. Make sure you really look at all the pieces here, right? Like if you can read this stuff. Communism has an impact on the capital. So kind of, it's like, yeah, it's definitely negative, right? And it's like, this guy is communist. And the thing is that those who are fighting against are fighting for working conditions are seen as like influenced by communism. Organized labor ruins their own wages. Yeah, right. They're like ruining capitalism, right? Organized labor ruins capitalism. Influenced by communists? Question mark. You know, they weren't necessarily always influenced by communists, but that's the fear, right? That's kind of the general. They're just kind of seen as communists. Is like you're right. You're ruining your wages. You're just going to make things worse for yourself. Things were fine. So that's document 2. What about document 3? What does document 3 say about the labor unions? Were they successful? Were they unsuccessful? This is a employee contract. Just think about what this contract is forcing the employee to do. Western Union Telegraph Company. So, forced to not take part in unions, right? So, companies could forcing employees to not be part of labor unions. Yep. Forcing the employees to disengage with labor unions. Okay, document 4. Here's this is a cartoon in Puck magazine was very satirical. So what's the call here? What's the issue? This is the doc. So Jasper, you shouldn't skip anything. I know that you get the 6 points. You get the point for having 6 documents, not 7. But if you just decide you're going to skip this document, if you get one other document wrong, that's an entire point you're losing. So you want to really make sure to use them all. You're right, Brennan, that this would be kind of negative. So what's going on here? What's the problem within labor unions, according to this? No leader, right? Lack of strong leadership, and too unorganized, right? Too loud, too many voices. Good. All right, document 5. This one's a little easier. What's the problem here? Let's see. We got names of those killed yesterday as furnished by the coroner. Brutal. Yep. strikers killed. There's also some detectives killed, Pinkertons, right? So we have also some Pinkerton. Okay, document 6. United States Supreme Court in re Debs, 1895. I think document 6 is a little bit less. Document 6 is less obvious. It is negative, though. You guys are right. So what's the problem? How is this affecting laborers? Right. So the government is using the Supreme Court, using court injunction to stop strikes from happening. Right, because they're saying that they have the jurisdiction over interstate commerce so that there can't be strikes in the railroads because that would affect the postal service. And so this is obviously an obstacle for them. All right, and then lastly, document 7, Samuel Gompers, who, by the way, is the AFL. So you guys were right with that yesterday. I just looked that up. So what's going on here? Are they successful? Are they not? And what about it? Can't really tell. Okay. So, I mean, I think it's like, in this testimony, Samuel Gompers is kind of saying that the working people need to have access to strikes because as long as there's more technology, the employees are going to suffer, right? It's like the strikes are a necessity for employees. There has to be that. But as of yet, there's just been a lot of sacrifice, right? Can you use that as a comparison for complexity? So you wouldn't really need comparison at all. The only place that you could use that as a cause for complexity, right? Because you could talk about causes in your complexity argument, and that would be that's the opposite of effects. And so you could use this document to talk about causes theoretically, because he does talk about the fact that there's no new methods of production and distribution are constantly being made. And so that is like requiring a strike, right? New tech could be potentially dangerous to employees. So that's what I would do, is go through all 7 documents and just sort of just gather in the information, not quite source yet, but you're just figuring out what are all of them about, right? And then you actually want to write your thesis. And in this case, clearly we're seeing negative, right? I think that's obvious. So your thesis would just sort of restate the prompt, right? The organized labor from 1875 to 1900, or between between 1875 and 1900, organized labor was largely unsuccessful in improving the position of workers because of, and then we want to just like answer the prompt using some of these answers, right? Because of like disorganized strikes that led to deaths. That could include this one, that could include this one, that could include this one. And government and intervention from the government and management to prevent organized strikes, right? And then that you would include 2, 3, 6, and then maybe this one I would include in like an effect or in a cause paragraph. So let's get into this. Let's get into this, like actually writing this. So, right. So this could be our thesis. What kinds of things would we write in our context? What would be some examples of things that topics that we could include in our context? What's that like previously on? This will be our thesis. So what kinds of, let's just quickly brainstorm the context. Market/industrial revolution. Right. Right, and with that, you could talk about new technologies, child labor. Yeah, so trust. You want me to write the context, or you feel good about it? You tell me. I don't know if you guys would appreciate when I just write it and you like watching me write it, or if you're like, oh, I don't need to watch you write it, just keep going. It's hard to tell. All right, I'll write it. All right, so you could say in the 19th century, the United States became an industrial powerhouse. Because of new technologies. Yeah. And I don't know. And a growing labor force. Throughout the century, improvements in transportation, communication, improvements in transportation such as the railroads, improvements in transportation such as the railroads and in mechanized industry such as the cotton gin allowed U.S. corporations to advance, to make a lot of money, to gain a lot, to revolutionize. Yeah, thank you. You gotta do this together. At the same time, there was an increase in immigration with the new opportunities available because of which led to conflicts by the end of the century between laborers and management. These conflicts played out as working conditions and hours were unfair to the working population, who were organizing to fight for more rights. Does that work? I mean, I think that would give you the point, right? You're clearly talking about the market revolution. I think we can make this better, but for the context piece, it doesn't have to be all related to the topic. I mean, it is all related to the topic, right? Because in this topic, we're talking about labor and organized labor, and so you just have to like give the background to that. I could have just stayed focused on the new technologies. I could have just really talked about the market revolution. Maybe I want to even say that. I don't know. with the market revolution, just so that they know for sure that's what I'm doing. So here we go. This is our context. Okay. All right. So then it becomes actually writing paragraphs. Is it better to be focused or broader? It's better to be focused. You know, in your context, your best bet is to quickly brainstorm a couple things like we just did, and then just like choose one or two to like flesh out in 4 or 5 sentences. That's your best bet. So just come up with a few things that you're like, okay, clearly this is a lead into this topic, but you know, what is it that I'm going to actually talk about? And then really just stay focused on that. So, all right. So in terms of your body paragraphs, this is what they'll look like. The body paragraphs will always be a topic sentence, paraphrased evidence from the document, sourcing, right? That's HIP. And I'll go through these more in a second. And then outside evidence at the end. More docs and then outside evidence. So for every document that you're going to use, you're going to give evidence from the document, then you're going to source it, and then at the end of the paragraph, you're going to give outside evidence that relates to one of those documents. And if you do it like that, then you should have enough. You should have enough chances to get the point. So let's write one of these paragraphs. You know, the fact that it led to deaths and intervention or disorganized strikes that led to deaths. Okay, so the strikes at the end of the 19th century were mostly unsuccessful in, what's the prompt say? In improving the position of workers. Take the words from the prompt because that's what, you know, they want you to be exact. In improving the position of workers because they became disorganized and led to more casualties. Okay, so that's just your topic sentence, and you'll include that. And then you want to start giving evidence from the documents. So if we give evidence from document 1, it would be like, you know, document 1 is specifically talking about the Great Railroad Strike. And so you could kind of, if you talked about the Great Railroad Strike, then you would get outside evidence. But you would just kind of cite. So the one thing you want to do is never actually use the word document. You wouldn't want to write in document 1 blank. The reason why is because you will write a better response if you don't refer to the document, if you just refer to like who wrote it and what it is. It's not like you lose points for writing document, but you know, for example, you would want to write like the New York Times, you know, in an editorial published by the New York Times in 1877, the strikes were described as, and then you would use this. Yeah, you should cite it because that just makes it easier for the reader. But we're described as, you know, reckless. The strikers were described as reckless. So you don't actually want to quote. You can quote 1 word, 2-word phrases, but don't use quotes, just paraphrase. Quoting is a waste. And at the end, you can just put doc 1 in there. You know, and like that would work as reckless and I don't know, and ignorant. As reckless, even though they had some community support. Doc 1. And then you're going to source it. So when you source it, you're going to choose context, purpose, audience, or POV. Okay, it doesn't matter which one of the 4 you choose, but you'll do one of those. So in this case, let's say we did, make this blue. Let's say we did, you know, historical context. This editorial was published in response to the Great Railroad Strikes of 1877, which were the first mass strike, by U.S. workers. You didn't mention the last part about community support. Does that change anything? No, I don't think so. I think it's enough. And then this right here can be your sourcing. It also could be your outside evidence, but we can use it as sourcing. So let's say we just did that. Then, oops. Okay, so that I'm going for context, right? I could say that the New York Times are writing to their readers in order to deter future strikes because they, the media was never really behind it, but that I'm having a little trouble thinking of exactly why. So I would just choose one that I felt comfortable with. And then I would get into evidence from another document. So let's say we use evidence from document 4, right? And then again, you're not going to actually say in document 4, you're going to say in a satirical cartoon published in Puck magazine, a satirical cartoon published in Puck magazine shows one of the reasons why the strikes were unsuccessful. The lack of strong leadership in organized labor, as well as like an unrefined message that, unrefined message coming from too many different parties became an obstacle for workers trying to gain rights. And then I'll just put doc 4. So if you don't cite it, you don't lose points. At no point in all of this test can you lose points. You never lose points. You can only gain them. So if you don't cite it, that's okay. And then we would want to, again, source it. So then you just think, okay, which one can I use for this? Can I use context? Can I use audience? Can I use purpose? I think you could, there's a lot of different pieces that you could use on this one. I think it's just, I don't know exactly. It's right before the last one. Yeah, maybe point of view. Yep, you can use point of view. So, all right. So for essence of time, I'll just kind of skip that. But that's how, that's how you would do it. You would write your sourcing, and then we would want to do evidence from, like in this paragraph, I think we can include evidence from document 5 about the strikers being killed. No, let me put that one in blue, and then you would source document 5, right? Okay, and then you'd have in one paragraph, you would have sourced things 3 times. So technically you could get that point just from that paragraph. And then you would give some outside evidence, right? And your outside evidence, you could really give anything, right? Like they have a list here. But you'd want to think about like what they have here. And maybe you have, think about, you could actually talk about that specific strike or any of the specific strikes, or a leader that wasn't really strong enough. You could talk about like Eugene Debs or something not gaining the right supports, and that would help prove this paragraph, that there just wasn't enough organization. Or you could talk about casualties in another place, right? You could talk about Haymarket. After you give evidence from document 5 and you talk about people who died, you could talk about, there were other examples of casualties from strikes and demonstrations, such as the Haymarket Square riot, in which several were killed when an anarchist threw a bomb. That would give you your outside evidence, because you're bringing in something that's not specifically in the documents, and it's helping you get that point, right? I don't know. So the biggest thing is to just try to get as many points as you can, as quickly as you can. So, for example, you want to be really clear on what you need, right? So if you get, in your first paragraph, you get context, you get thesis, that's 2. Your next paragraph, you should really focus in on, like, for example, outside evidence. Really try to get that point. So that that's just like another way that you're earning your point faster. And you can get all 7 points with an incomplete essay. I mean, it doesn't have to be that long, right? So it wouldn't necessarily be incomplete, but you can get all 7 points without writing like a lot. All you would need here is, let's see, without a conclusion. Yeah, you don't even need the conclusion. In the conclusion, I would restate the thesis, but you don't actually need much else, because you don't, like, if you don't get the thesis point here for some reason, you can rewrite it in your conclusion and you can get the point there. But other than that, you don't need a conclusion. I mean, it's hard because it's like, I want you to be a good writer, but for this essay, it's not about good writing. It's really about knocking out each of these points. Like, this is what you should memorize, this rubric. And as you're writing, just really think, just like you can see here, every sentence that I'm writing is getting highlighted. Every sentence has to do with one of the points. It's helping me earn a point, or it's actually earning me the point. And so if I'm writing extra, I don't need to do it, So what questions do you guys have about DBQs? How do you get the second document point, though? It's about the number that you're using. So the first evidence point is just when you use 3 documents. The second one is when you use 6 documents. So as long as you're using all of them. So like if I stopped my essay right after this, let's say I had actually finished this piece of evidence, I could have gotten that first evidence point because I had to talk about 3 documents here. I also could have gotten my sourcing point, right? Because I do source 3 documents here. Like, let's say this was all finished, and I could have gotten outside evidence. So in one paragraph, I theoretically could have gotten 3 points. So just these 2 paragraphs could give me a 5, right? Why not? Like, that's these 2 points in one paragraph. This point is in the second paragraph, and this one, and this one. How do you know if you explain enough? So you just explain it. I mean, I don't think you need more than 2 sentences per document, like, you give evidence from it. And then if you want to give one more sentence of evidence, you could. But then the pink part is just where you are just finished. So one thing that you can say is, like, if someone could ask you why or when or what, if I could ask you a question based on the sentence you wrote, then maybe you didn't write enough. But like this pink right here would get sourcing because it's showing historical context. So I think simply, but explain, if that makes sense. Question about outside evidence. You talked about something relevant to the paragraph, but could I talk about something why labor unions didn't have enough members, which isn't fully related? So for your outside evidence, the best way to get the point is to try to come up with outside evidence attached to one of the documents, just because it flows really easily, right? If you give something that's totally separate, you almost have to write a separate paragraph for it because it doesn't really fit. But you don't need to do that because you can get the outside evidence point in just a sentence or two. So you don't have to. I mean, in terms of here, oh, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily, like, if you're going to talk, like, the fact that they're largely unsuccessful, and then you want to attach that idea of why they don't have enough members to that, you totally could. You can pretty much find a point wherever. So for using the other evidence where labor was a positive, would you just say on the other hand kind of thing? Yeah, I would. I would just kind of say, I might, for this to try to get the complexity point, just write a paragraph using document 7 where I'm giving the counter argument, right? Even though there was a need for, improvements. So like that. Explaining is the hip. Yes. Yep. This is your explanation. And that's hip. Any other questions? It says you need 6 docs as support, right? Yep, to get the second point. So there's 2 possible evidence points if you have so it's like the same thing. So in order to get this, the second evidence point, you have to use 6 documents. And if you just want the 1, then you use 3. Yeah, the documents are shared with you. They're shared as a handout right now. Is that just explaining what the doc says? Yes. Yes. So to earn 1 point, the response must accurately describe rather than simply quote from at least 3 of the documents. To earn 2 points, the response must accurately describe rather than simply quote from at least 6 documents and must use the content of the documents to support an argument in response to the prompt. Okay. All right. Any other questions? I'll post the documents as well with this document. So you have them. Excuse me. Oh. And we're going to do another practice DBQ next weekend on period like 7 or 8. So you have another chance to practice them. If you want to practice any, I kind of wanted to go over the complexity paragraph. Yeah, I'll post my sample. So Jasper, for the complexity paragraph, what I would do here is, I think you have 2 choices. You could either just talk about causes of labor and use document 7 to do that, or you could synthesize this. So you could talk about labor strikes in the 20th century and how they were similar. You could talk about like Cesar Chavez, or try to think of another one. But yeah. And Jasper, if you want to write a complexity paragraph for this and send it to me, I'll grade it for you. I'll take a look at it. And yes, I will post my example. So it goes for any of you guys. When's the videos for the content for period 8? Next weekend. So next weekend I'll do period 7 on Saturday, and I'm going to do period 8 on Sunday. And then I'll probably do a bonus DBQ session on Sunday to do one more sample of a DBQ. So that by the time period 8 and 9 I'll do together on Sunday. So by the time it's Monday, we've done all 9 periods, and then Monday we'll start looping back a little bit and doing some other practice questions. Yeah, it still counts because you could say that while the strikes in this time period were unsuccessful because of X, Cesar Chavez and the agrarian strikes were successful because of Y, and that would be fine. Okay. All right. So I have to bounce. We're doing a calculus review in just a few minutes. So if you are taking calculus, you can join that. You should have the link for that. Or if you don't, it's in the community. So if you have any questions on DBQ, just send them over to me. I'll post this video soon, hopefully tonight. And I'll see you guys next weekend. All right. Woohoo! All right. Just drop a 1 if this was useful for you, just so I know. Cool, cool, cool. Sweet. Yeah, cram this week, you guys. Good luck this week. Enjoy.